Greetings, everyone. Yes, of course, my usual saying. It is my favorite time of the month, the first and third Tuesdays, where I, Linda Talaferro from the T, the Extra Effort, brings you Being Brown at Work live, and yet another phenomenal guest. As you see, beautiful woman here with me. I'm introducing for the first time on Being Brown at Work, and I'm so honored. And we're going to jump right into telling you who this wonderful young lady is. This is Candace P. Jones. She is a corporate leader and an executive coach specializing in leadership development for Black women in tech. Passionate about empowering individuals and organizations to thrive through change, she brings a unique blend of strategic insight, technical expertise, and leadership acumen to her work. Her deep commitment to workplace equity is central to her work, recognizing and addressing the unique challenges Black women face in their corporate careers. Through her newsletter, Corporate Crowns, which I love that title, Candace fosters a sanctuary where strategy meets soul, delivering straight talking insights to help Black women get their career essentials or ABCs. Listen to this: ABCs, attribution, belonging, and compensation. The newsletter offers exclusive events, coaching strategies, and career resources away from the noise of social media. Welcome to Being Brown at Work Live, Candace.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I have been looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, so have I, since we were connected by another mutual friend who's excellent at making connections a few months ago, and you so graciously accepted my request and offer to be a guest. I'm excited about this conversation too. And so let's just jump right in because, this is a topic that I've had on my podcast before, but because it is still around, I don't know what you think, but it feels like it's not going anywhere. I felt like it needed to be addressed again because we do need to kill this thing called this workhorse mentality. Candace, what's your perspective on why this is even a thing? Where did it come from?
Mm, yeah. I mean, I think to your point, it's something that persists, right? We heard our grandmothers talking about it. We heard our mothers talking about it. Now we're talking about it, and unfortunately, we're having to speak to our children about it. And so I think that a big part of it is that it is a deeply seated part in the way that this country looks at the labor of Black people, especially Black women. I think that there is an overdue that needs to be done with how we think about the time and the talents and the labor
Mhm.
of Black people. And as a result, we see that play out in our workplaces. And it results in this corporate workhorse that we see so frequently.
Yeah.
Some folks might be familiar with the John Henry, right? John Henry, where the story is known for being such a strong worker and essentially worked themselves to death. And it's something that I bring up to my coachees frequently. I don't want you to be Jane Henry.
Yes.
Um, Personally, I look at my family, you know, my grandmother, my mother both passed away in their mid 50s.
Wow.
My mother, had her first stroke at the age of 28 at work and never
Ooh,
fully recovered from that.
ooh.
And so this is a phenomenon that we see playing out time and time again. And the impacts are devastating, not just for us individually, but for our community. Because when you take down the woman, you take down a family, you take down a community. You're opening this space for us to have this conversation because it's an important one.
Oh, it's so important, Candace, and you're absolutely correct. I mean, the woman, when you, like you said, and perfectly so well stated, you take down the family, you take down the community. And something you said resonated with me when you talked about your mother. Oh my gosh, having a stroke at work and then, losing other family members so young in their 50s. Something really resonated with me in that because I was always told to work hard, right? Always told, work hard. And it was not until I think in my 40s or so, that I realized, wait a minute, that is really not what moves the needle. And if I keep in this direction, something devastating could happen to me. And actually, I would add this, Candace. I was given a coach just as I was entering into the executive ranks, and he actually told me working hard is not going to make the difference. That's not what gets you into the next level. But I'm telling you, like your grandparents, like mine, like my mother, that's all we knew in our community, right? Is to work hard. And I believe that's where this workhorse thing has come
Absolutely.
from.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, what you told, you work twice as hard to get half as far, right? Some reality to that. Also, that the perception and us taking that into our interactions with the workplace, that it doesn't serve us. It doesn't always
No.
serve us, right? Because there is a limit. So much that our bodies, our minds, our souls, and especially as you're climbing up the ranks, it's not just about how much output that you have. Frankly, a lot of this is relationship based as well, right? When I was, really focused on helping people navigate the job search, over 70% of new jobs are secured through networking. So I get that we want to get all of
Yes.
these certifications, make sure that we have all of these, other experiences, which are important. I don't want to discount that. But the more that you advance in your career, a lot of it is around the relationships that you formed, the strategies that you've been able to develop and execute that you have influenced
Mm.
along the way. So a lot of times people aren't remembering exactly what you did. They don't remember you staying up late at night, but they remember how they felt in their interaction with you, and that's more likely what they're going to vouch about when it comes time for your next
Oh my
opportunity.
yes. Oh my gosh, Candace. Yes. So true. That is what they're going to state. You're absolutely correct. But for whatever, and maybe you can shed some light on this, I'm sure it's historical in nature with us as a community. For whatever reason, we still think it is all about the work product. Now, don't get me wrong, we have to have good work product. But for some reason, we think it's all about that. So if I work 10 hours, 12 hours a day, if I, do the extra and go above and beyond, that's the difference. Not whether or not I say good morning when I come in, or not whether or not I build, to your point, your valid point, build relationships. It's not about that. I got to be really good at what I do. So I've got to keep working hard. Where do you think that's rooted from? Like I said, I believe it's historical. What's your perspective on that?
I mean, may I speak plainly?
Yes, please do. Yes, yes.
I think we aren't given the true rules of the game because we were never positioned to win. So we're told to
Mm,
labor. So we're told to do the work. So we're things that position other people to advance. But when it really comes down to what is going to be, the meaningful input, that additionality for your career, right? We're not given the true playbooks. We're not given the true tools. And that's why I've been so committed to distilling this information that I've been able to get through my own experiences, from being privileged enough to go to a place like Stanford for undergrad and my graduate studies, where I was given a lot of the tools of, hey, here's how this works, you know, and then being able to bring that to us because that's not what we're told. We're told work hard, put your head down, and it's all going to work out for you. Probably not.
mm,
I mean, I don't want to say probably, but the odds are not in your favor, right? There's a different game that many of our peers are playing, and it works. And when we get the tools, when we get the playbook, we knock it out the park. But we need to know what those steps are. And so, I think that's where having spaces like this, where you and I are speaking and talking about here are the factors that actually do contribute to you moving forward and moving up, if that's what you want, is important and it's critical, I would argue, right? For us just to be well. I want us to do well, but I want us to be well. Like, it is so,
mm.
so important that we are well because so many statistics show that we are not
Well,
well. We are not well. And when I speak to many of the women that I work with, their LinkedIn's are just pristine. degrees on degrees, more degrees than a thermometer. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But if I really were to use in the words of Gianna, but how you be,
Yes.
but how you be
Yes.
here, the answer is a lot more concerning.
Oh my gosh, Candace.
So again, I thank you for creating a space like this where we can have some real talk, because I don't think we're given the actual playbook for the game we're actually playing.
Yes. So, I mean, see, I told you, audience, gems. I knew this woman. There's so many gems. You're absolutely correct. I can't but totally agree with everything you just said, because we don't have the playbook, and that's why I do this. This has been my purpose since 2017, because I agree so much with you. For those of us, you're Stanford, I'm Carnegie Mellon, and the University of Michigan Ross School of Business, right? We were in those settings to be given and shown the playbook, right? And then the roles that I've had, and I've been blessed with mentors and sponsors that opened doors and whispered in my ear, right? And they didn't look like me, whispered in my ear because they saw more, they saw what was possible. So they wanted me to understand the playbook, the game, right? And that's why I do this, because I think it's too much is given, although you worked hard, I worked hard as well, of course. But as much is given, much is required. And I want to give space, I want to make room, and I want to share with those that weren't given that opportunity to know the game, that a game exists, know the rules of the game, and then how to play it. So thank you for being so comfortable to speak freely, because that's the purpose of being brought at work, is to call a thing, right? To really make it clear. And then those of you want to join us in a couple of weeks for part two, because then in part two, we can give the tools and methodologies to be successful when playing the game. And something else you said too, Candace, it wasn't meant for us to succeed. That's why it wasn't freely given. That's why it takes to be in certain special places and spaces, of which all of us just unfortunately don't have those opportunities. So thank you so much for being open to share with you what you've shared, and being here with me, and then what you do with your newsletter, and what you do with your coaching as well. Really giving the clarity around the why, because I think it's so important to understand the purpose. Do you not? The why first, to be very clear on that, then the strategies to move forward. So Candace, I'm gonna shift it a
Absolutely.
little bit. We've talked about the systemic piece of this workhorse mentality. Would you say that there's any part of it that we contribute to as Black and Brown women?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we contribute, but I wouldn't say we are the
Mm,
originator, is what I would say.
okay.
We play a role, but I wouldn't say we're the author. Um, Internalizing what we hear generation after generation about the working twice as hard to get half as far, that even if you were to strictly stick to your roles and responsibilities, right? If you believe that you must overwork in order to advance, you will always be in a circumstance of
Overwork.
overwork, of burnout, right? And so frequently, what I find myself, having to examine with women as we're going through, hey, you're feeling burned out. How did we get here? Is going back to what you said. Well, what is your why? What are we actually optimizing for? What does success look like for you? And then let's do an actual mapping of how your actions and behaviors drive those
Mm,
outcomes. And you would be shocked how frequently there is a disconnect, there's an incongruence. And so if I were to say, okay, well, where do we play a role, right? I think it is maybe not either having or creating the space to be just as strategic in managing your time, energy, and talents and output as we do for our corporate careers, right? I sit down personally. I have a strategy for what I'm optimizing for. I have an annual plan. I
ah,
have milestones, right? In the same way that I run major initiatives for these large companies and organizations and entities, I do the same for myself because I say I am my most important client ultimately. So why would I add rigor to driving outcomes and optimally using resources for others and not do the same for myself? Like, you better use your genius for you. You know what I mean? If someone else is willing to pay you for it, why would you not give it to yourself too?
Okay. Okay, wait. We got to pause right there. We got to pause right there. You better use your genius for you. And if you can optimize things for somebody, why not do Candace? Yes. But we don't think about that, right? We're so focused on the task at hand for the role we have in whatever XYZ corporation. Then when it's time to do the work for ourselves, we don't, it doesn't go together. I just love what you absolutely said
It doesn't.
because, and we don't do that type of work for ourselves. We don't. Oh my God, that was genius.
We don't. And a lot of it, I don't want to say it's just us being out there and this is self-imposed, right? Again, we're not the author, but we play a role. And there is, I think, especially for women, and then when you add Black women and all of the other factors, we are not given permission for self-advocacy. And so it can be difficult to create or to even reclaim that space for yourself, for that self-assessment. Um, and I know personally, it's easier for me to advocate for
Mm,
others than to advocate for myself,
mm.
right? And I do this work. I do this work, and there's still this reprogramming that I have to do for myself of you're your most important client. Like,
Right?
I'm walking myself through my own playbooks and having to do those check-ins because
Yeah.
we are getting a lot of other external signals that say you don't get to prioritize you. You don't get to do that. You don't get to make these, I wouldn't say selfish, but just self-advocacy, self-aware, self-honoring, that we're not given those spaces
Yes.
to do that. And so we have to take it. We have to take it. And we have to remind ourselves that
We
we
have to
can take it.
yes, and be intentional about it. Because you're right, we are given those signals that we don't get to do that for you. And I tell you what else, at least I can speak for me, because of the generation I'm in and who raised me, someone born in the 1920s, I was told that was being selfish, stuck up, think you're better than, right? When you do those kinds of things. And even today, I find that some people, rather than celebrating or asking, how did you do that? Let me learn from you. They're like, oh, who do you think you are, Miss, board seat, or because you got a VP. I'm like, you know what I'm saying? That's what, in my mind, you're right. We're not the authors, but we play into this a lot of ways. And that's the purpose of the work you do, and the work I do, and the work I know a few others do, to just break that bondage, right? And say, yes, you are allowed to self-advocate. You are allowed to cheer out loud for yourself. You are allowed to do that. Because what did you say, Candace?
Absolutely.
Who's your best client?
You are your most
There
important
you
client.
are. There you are.
You are. You are. It's so important. I think that's where connection and
Mm.
community become so important, right? Whether it's your sisters, whomever, but having other people who can provide that reflection, having other people who can provide that outside perspective, having other people who can provide that accountability to continue to advocate for yourself and continue down this path when you're getting other signals that are telling you otherwise. It's really, really important not to be on this journey alone. And I don't care who you choose, right? Your faith leader, your sister friend, if you want to get, a AI bot or something, whatever it is, but something that's going to remind you, right, to take care of you, to advocate for you, what stars are and what those building blocks look like to get there. It's really important, I think, to do that in community.
Absolutely.
And that's where in the work that I and just in life, I try to make sure we're connecting the dots because many times we can feel isolated, especially when we're on this corporate journey where the more that you go to the top, you're not really going to see people like you.
Oh,
Unfortunately, that's the truth for many of us.
yes.
And so that can start to mess with you a little bit because you're wondering, did I really see that? Or, well, is that just happening to me? But what I find is that even when you are isolated and you feel like, well, I must have imagined that, or, well, it's just happening to me, zoom out a little bit,
Mm,
connect those dots.
mm.
Person this is happening to, you might be the only one in this space who this is happening to because you're the only one like you. But other people who are in similar spaces and have similar identities, similar backgrounds, etc., you start to see some of those themes, and that is so validating. We need to have that recalibration, if you will,
Yes,
right?
yes.
To really understand what we can do for ourselves, the space that we should claim, and to stay on that journey because a lot of the other external signals are telling us otherwise.
Absolutely. And it's when we don't do what you just described, Candace, and we allow those signals to really then enter in and we start to pay attention to them, that's when totally off course, that's when they won, or however you want to put it. That's when that takes place. And then we're sitting back and we're looking back at our and wonder, oh my God, I must not have deserved that. Then we start telling ourselves the other crap, right? Well, they said I wasn't ready, so I clearly wasn't
Yeah,
ready. Or they said I wasn't, so I clearly wasn't. We allow those signals to penetrate because we don't have that community. And I'm so glad you said that because Candace, I'm a full believer that no man's an island. No man's an island. You don't do this thing called life, whether personal or professional, alone. You just don't. You either have like you said, a sister friend, someone, a faith friend, and today love your AI bot, whatever it is. I love that, right? But you have whatever you need in order to have that sounding board, that ear, that reflection, that mirror, and then also that shoulder, and then also somebody to carry you even when you're tired of walk in and say, okay, I'm here for you kind of thing. I love that you shared that, Candace, because this is no joke. What we're aspiring to be and do for us is not an easy task at hand, but one we deserve if we choose to take it. And I know you said that earlier. If it's a choice, if it's something you want, you're worthy, you're enough, you deserve it. And it's this kind of conversation and work that needs to be done introspectively, wouldn't you say, Candace? Introspectively, as well as externally, right? In order to achieve
absolutely.
those goals.
Absolutely. I mean, I think any action that you take should be values
Mm,
based. And so, those who are listening, if you haven't done it recently, I strongly encourage you to do it right now, right? Is to really take a moment to examine your values. What are those core pillars of your life? What are those core pillars of how you show up, how you want to impact this world, how you want to navigate this world? And when you know what those anchoring themes are, what those values are, it's so much
mm,
easier to make decisions. It's so much easier to assess trade offs. It's easier to prioritize your time and your energy. I can't tell you how frequently, after we actually take that time to figure out what people really care about, what matters most to them, why, what success looks like, and get deep on that. Really know, but why does that matter? So that you know that you know that you know why that matters. A lot of this other stuff, it's just a matter of putting those pieces in
mm.
place.
Oh my gosh, that was everything right there. That was everything. Because we could so get out of our own way. And as you even said, pieces fall into place when we have clarity as to the why, not superficially. And I loved you said that. Get deep with that, not on the superficial thing, but what is the real in here, in your gut down here, why? That you either want this role or you
Absolutely.
aspire to do this or have this, whatever it is. in these career that was everything. That was everything, Candace. So as we wrap this session, really kind of giving color and context as to this workhorse situation, the mentalities that we have, the sometimes environments that we're in as being the workhorse, and now in a couple of weeks we're going to be talking about part two, refreshing some of the suggestions you made today, and then maybe even giving some new ones. What would be your closing comments around, because I love what you just said, really helping people with the foundational understanding of this workhorse piece so that when they do get with us in a couple of weeks and they're jotting down, like you said, a clear action plan, and they're able to do that well in a couple of weeks, what would you leave them with in this first contextual discussion that we're having in part one?
That is an excellent question. I think for this part, I would leave them with this journey takes intentionality. It takes intentionality. Um, I've mentioned external signals multiple times. And the reason that I try to emphasize that for folks is that, much of this is like being on a conveyor belt. There are norms around us that are counter to what we are talking about today. Not being the corporate workhorse requires intentional and disciplined action on your part. And so the first part I would say is give yourself some grace if you found yourself in this position. You didn't make it up yourself. You may have played a role, you were not the author. But to know that if you took no other action, this is likely the condition that you would be in. And so now that we know this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now that we know this, and that there are tools and strategies and playbooks that are available, which we're looking forward to talking to you about in a couple of weeks, to know that this is going to require some action. There are actions that you can take, but that with community, with discipline, with clarity, that it is very possible. And it doesn't have to be to the detriment of reaching your goals. I would argue that by being selective, you become more effective. I would argue that when you have sort of a focused approach, you tend to have more impact and you show up better, right? And part of that relational element that is such a big part of being successful in your career over time, you show up in a way where it ends up really serving you, right? There's so much that is unlocked when you're able to be clear about what you're optimizing for and start to employ these tools. And so give yourself some grace now if you're like, ooh, yeah, I am there. There's help.
Yes.
It's going to take some work. It's very possible to get there. And I look forward to being on the journey.
Wonderful, Candace. Thank you so much. That was everything to really, help them understand, because we do tend to beat ourselves up, and we do tend to say, yeah, everything they're saying, that's me. And so therefore, I'm not going to get to where I aspire to be. But I love what you said, because there is help and it is possible. But recognition, knowing that you have a problem and understanding what it is everything. That's the first critical step, right? That's the first critical step. Yes, ma'am. It has been phenomenal. Of course, look, lady, you knew. I mean, I told you when we met, I was like, we have got to, we have got to, we have got to. And I'm so honored to have had this discussion with you, part one, excited about part two, but I'm so honored to have this discussion with you on such a critical topic that we need to continue to shine a light on until it's no more of a conversation in our future generations, right? It's no more of a thing within our community. Candace, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. This was fabulous. This was fabulous.
Thank you for having me. This was yeah, I very much enjoyed being in this conversation with you. Thank you for creating this space. It is needed. You are needed. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Okay, everyone.